In 1996, Frank, a former police officer, and his wife Carol were shopping in the town of Liverpool in the UK. Carol went to buy a book from Dylan's bookshop, which was situated on Bold Street. Frank decided that he would visit another shop whilst his wife was looking in the bookstore. Before he made it to the shop, he bumped into an old friend and stopped for a while to chat. A few minutes later, Frank finished up the conversation with his friend and visited his shop, then walked back towards the bookstore to meet his wife. As he approached across the road to Dylan's bookstore, he noticed a sign above the shop door which had the word Crips written on it. He went to step off the curb when a small box van sped past him and honked its old-fashioned horn. He noticed the name Cardins on the side of the van. Startled, Frank looked around the street to find it didn't look the same as it did minutes ago. The roads were filled with old-fashioned vehicles that looked like they were from the 1950s. People were also wearing clothing that certainly didn't belong in 1996. Everyone in the street seemed to be wearing old-fashioned clothing from a different time period. The men and women alike all seemed to be wearing clothing that dated back to just after the Second World War. The men were wearing hats and long raincoats, and the ladies were wearing headscarves, and the ones that weren't had hairstyles that dated back to the 1950s. Frank crossed the road. He was very puzzled, as you can imagine, as he headed to where Dylan's bookshop should be, but for some reason was now named Crips. As he approached, he noticed a window display had not a single book, but instead it was full of handbags, umbrellas and shoes. As Frank went to enter the store, he noticed a woman also looking in the window, looking just as confused as he did. She seemed to be dressed in modern clothing, carrying a modern shopping bag. They both glanced at each other, and the woman smiled at him as she walked through the doorway as he followed. As they entered the shop, Frank was relieved to see that the shelves were filled up with books, modern people, and modern clothing. He looked back to the window display to find it was full of books also, not one handbag, umbrella, or shoe in sight. The young woman turned back to Frank. Looking confused, she shook her head and said, "That's strange, I thought this was a new clothes shop." And she turned and walked out back into Bold Street, which was once again filled with vehicles and people from their own time period. The experience never left Frank's mind, as you can imagine, and he decided to do a little research. Being a former police officer, he was quite good at investigating his own strange experience. The information Frank discovered was astounding. Crips was in fact a woman's shop that sold clothing and other items in the 1950s, and was indeed situated where Dylan's bookshop stood in 1996. Also, remember the van that sped past Frank beeping its old-fashioned horn at him, with Cardins written on the side? Frank discovered that there was a firm named Cardins that owned many vans and had the name Cardins written on the side of the vans. Frank discovered that this firm was also in business around the 1950s time period. This isn't the only report of a time slip in Bold Street. One interesting theory is that the Underground Railway underneath Liverpool runs in a circular pattern and is roughly underneath Bold Street. This may be responsible for generating enough energy to allow the time slips to occur. The people who have reported time slips on Bold Street always seem to travel no further back than the 1920s. Roughly the same date the railway lines were first electrified. Adding to the theory that maybe the train lines are somehow responsible, the Dylan's bookstore was later rebranded and became Waterstone's bookshop. But since 2014, the business left the premises on Bold Street, and as of 2018, the property still remains empty. So what do you think? Are time slips occurring on Bold Street? Or is this all just science fiction rather than science fact? I'll let you decide. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.